we're making a difference in people's lives. And we want people to know that. We want people to recognize just what we're doing here.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. I had an employer call me earlier this summer, and she was laughing, and she said, "Jessie, I had to pause my job listing after a week because I had too many great applicants." And I told her that's probably the best problem that a person can have. But that's what happens when your job post actually reaches the right people. When you list a job on Of the West, you're not just getting a line on a job board. You are putting that position in front of an entire community who already stands your world. Ranchers, marketers, livestock specialists, ag communicators, people who get it. Another employer filled her role within 3 days of posting it. 3 days. One of the other things that's really interesting to me is the listing that has been most popular this year is our premium option, which is the most expensive one. So that's kind of surprising, but it's pinned to the top. It is shared to all of our job seekers. It gets emailed in our emails. And clearly that type of listing is paying off for people, which is such a great feeling to have. So if you are hiring, whether it is one person or an entire team, it might be time to give your posting a little extra reach. You can find all of the details at ofthewest.co/employers, because sometimes you guys finding the right person, it just takes showing up in the right place. Welcome to today's episode of Leaders of the West. Oh, you guys are in for a real treat. I can't even take it. This was the most incredible episode. You guys are going to love this. Okay, so I sat down with Chris Boleman. He is the president and CEO of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So it's about to be March, which is when Houston kicks off, and it is the largest livestock show and rodeo in the United States. And there is so much incredible work that is obviously done behind the scenes. Just knowing that the pillars of Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which you guys are going to learn about in the show, are just really rooted in education and Western heritage and entertainment and the massive financial and economic impact, which is larger than the Super Bowl, by the way, that this event has on not only the city of Houston, but every single exhibitor, every single kid who takes an animal to the show. The amount of scholarships that they give back to students in Texas is absolutely, honestly, unfathomable. And it is so cool knowing that events like this, an event with a financial and economic impact larger than the Super Bowl, happen in and for the agriculture industry. It honestly gives me chills just thinking about it, because I think for many of us, we would say, oh, ag is always the underdog. And something like this proves that we are absolutely not. So it was such a joy to sit down with Chris. He is such a wealth of information. He is so incredibly kind and generous, and his excitement not only for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, but just for agriculture as a whole is contagious. So you guys are in for an incredible episode today. Let's get right to it. Welcome to Leaders of the West with Chris Boleman. Chris, this is going to be a great episode because we have so many different things that we're going to touch on. I gave a little bit of a bio for you in the introduction, but I think people always love to hear it from your mouth. So can you give us a little bit of background of just how you came to be at the helm of Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Jessie. It's great to be on today. I'm really excited to be on your show. And so, to be honest with you, I grew up down the road in Bryan College Station, home of Texas A&M University, which is where my dad was a professor of animal science. My granddad was actually a swine professor of animal science. And so we grew up on a small ranch right outside of College Station, right outside of Bryan. We grew up in 4-H. We grew up showing cattle and pigs both. And every year, the show that we most look forward to is, of course, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So I've been coming here my entire life. And then when I graduated from high school, I went to A&M and always stayed active with the show, helped with the judging contest, judged some of the open cattle here over the years, helped the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo on some research projects whenever I was a professor at A&M. And then about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I got a call from the CEO at the time asking me if my interest of coming, and I was interested of coming on staff here to head up the ag department, now the mission team. And so came here, and then right after COVID happened and we had that shutdown, I was asked to move into the CEO role. And so did that. And then we went through 1 year without a show. We did a livestock show for the kids, but nothing for the public, and then settled in. And so I can't believe I'm the president and CEO of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. It's an amazing organization, as you know. And so, yeah, really my whole history has strong ties here. My wife is on a committee here longer than we've been married. So that's more than 25 years. And so she scrambled here. We talk about that all the time. And so we just have a long history here. It's a great organization, and just tickled to be in the role I'm in.
Would 10-year-old you ever believe if you were to tell him, hey, someday you're going to be in charge of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo? Would he believe you?
I don't even know he even knew there was a position like that, to be honest. Literally, man, we showed steers and hogs hard when I was young, and that's all I cared about. And so I was more interested in who the judge of the steer show was, and grew up because of that, in judging and judged shows all over the place too when I was younger in my career. And so the older I got, the more you recognize what this show does for the community, and it just goes on and on. And so 10-year-old wouldn't know. By the time I was a teenager and understood the business, started to understand the business side, the 18-year-old for sure, if you'd have said you'd be the CEO, I'd be like, no way. There's no way that would happen. So, but here we are.
Here we are. Well, and I think too, for so many of us, we have this idea of what we want to do in life, and you find things that you love and you want to do more of it. But how many people, oh, well, I want to go ride horses or, train horses, but then it ends up looking like there's a whole lot more book work or things like that you spend more time in the office than you ever do getting to do the thing that you loved, which is why you started the business in the first place. So I can imagine for somebody like you with just a history of showing and then judging, and now being able to put on the premier livestock show and rodeo in the United States. I mean, that really is just the creme de la creme of career opportunities.
It really is. It's unbelievable, to be honest with you. There's a lot of ways I could say it, but I'd say unbelievable. And I think the big piece of it is the fact that just by my nature, I just like teams. I like working in teams. I like collaborative approaches. I like groups making the best decisions for the whole. And to me, that's what separates this organization. It is a volunteer-led organization. There's 36,000 volunteers. The chairman of the board's office is next to mine. We're in this together. We have 150 or so full-time staff, and it takes all of us to make this thing happen. It is a year-round job. I get that question all the time. Like, what do you do outside of March? Well, you plan the next one. Because, it's 20, 25 days when you count barbecue and parade and everything else. It's a full month of just, we're actually in show mode right now as we talk. But it really is a partnership, and I really appreciate that and the leadership model that's in place here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the size, because that is definitely one of the things that sets Houston apart from other events in our industries. But I also think that when it comes to agriculture or the Western way of life, I think it's often synonymous with being small. We're a very niche audience. We are 2% of the population who produces food in America. The towns that we hail from, they're very rural in location, and they're small in population numbers. But our industry boasts some of the most monumental events when it comes to the economic impact. And of those, obviously, Houston is absolutely at the top of the list. But do you think that people are aware of the impact that events like yours have? And maybe it's not even specific to Houston. When we lump in Denver or San Antonio or Fort Worth Stock Show, and the amount of people and just the economic driver of those types of industries when they are rooted in an industry that so many are removed from.
Yeah, it's a great question. Last year, we had 2.7 million visitors from the start of the World Championship Barbecue, which is the Thursday before we open on Tuesday for 20 days of rodeo. This year will be 21. with a concert-only performance at the end. And so that was a record for us. And I say that up front because those folks that come here are all a part of this community, even if it's for the short term, even if it's for the day. They're parking here, they're in a hotel room, they're eating offsite or they're eating on site. And so it's generating revenue and to build to put into the community. And I will say that I think a lot of times our shows are taken for granted as economic drivers. I will say that the year of COVID certainly recognized what an economic driver it was because it wasn't here. For just example, our commercial exhibitors, they'll tell us up to 50% of their annual sales is based on this show. Not to mention the tent companies that are local that are employed, the part-time labor company, all those things that
Hmm.
happen. We do economic impact studies. We do them about every 4 or 5 years. And our economic impact in 2024 was 326 million of direct economic impact to the greater Houston area, almost 600 million for the total economic activity generated. And what's interesting about that, Jesse, and what the message that we have around here all the time is anytime a big event comes to this community, there's always discussion about the economic impact. If it's a Super Bowl, if it's a Final Four, obviously we're getting ready to host, we're a host city for the World Cup. And so there's all these great data points about this is 300 million or 200 million. And so one of the things that we say is we're doing this every year. This isn't just when you get the bid and it comes to town. We do this every year. And that's really important for people to understand. It's really important to the stories that we tell, particularly from a community point of view, is it's easy to see the societal impact, the fact that people rally so much around the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo here in the Houston community. I always tell our Better Business Bureau, the Houston, our Greater Houston Partnership here in Houston, or everybody calls it something different depending on your community. But I always say sorry that your work isn't as good in March because everybody's out here. So sorry about that. But they work hard the other 11 months because when you have 36,000 volunteers, it's impacting all these companies, and all these companies are so supportive of us. I mean, it really is just a huge economic driver in this community, and it's like that in every community. So we have to tell that story. We have to continue to tell that story. And then I want to back up and answer what you started, because I think it's critically important to point out is that, yes, 2% of the population produces food for 100% of the population, right? 2% or 100%. And one of the things, if you really look at who the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is, and you look at the mission statement, the first sentence, the first part of it, the first words out of it is promoting agriculture. That's why we're here. This is an annual event that's here to promote agriculture. And in a city like Houston, the fourth largest in America, considered to be the most diverse city in the country as well, this is our time to promote agriculture, to tell our story. And so that's why we can never lose sight of that. It's critically important to us at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo that we're taking advantage of our month, that we're leveraging our month in March to be able to promote and tell the story of agriculture through our livestock show, through our horse show, through our petting zoo, as simple as that may be, through Ag Venture presented by Oxy. I mean, it's all of this is telling that story of agriculture, celebrating Western heritage, and we can never lose sight of that. I'm a big believer that the safest countries on the planet, over the thousands and millions of years of the countries that our world has been here, the safest ones are the countries that can produce their own food supply. And we can never, never, never lose sight of that.
Oh, amen to all of that. And I'm glad that you brought up the agriculture component, because that is one of the 4 pillars that are the rodeo's foundation. So education, Western heritage, entertainment, and then agriculture. Obviously, everybody has heard of the entertainment element of that, because you guys have the most incredible headlining acts coming every single night. I think you guys just announced those within the last week that we're recording them. So obviously, you guys who are listening to this, we're just a couple of weeks away from the start of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. But you have Kelly Clarkson, you have Chris Stapleton, Creed. It is not just country music either. It is anybody and everybody. So the entertainment aspect is really well known. But let's talk about Western heritage, agriculture. Obviously, there's the rodeo element and then the livestock showing. But what are some other things that bring people in and kind of are touch points for those areas?
Yeah, there's no question that when we ask in our surveys, one of the number one drivers is definitely who the entertainer is. And particularly in a community like Houston that has so many new people that are moving in this area every day. And if you go around town and talk about rodeo, they don't know or understand until March rolls around if they've never been before. So it is typically an entertainer that will demonstrate their ability to buy a ticket and want to come here. They want to go to, it's a livestock show and rodeo. What's that? Oh, Creed's playing, or, then, okay, I'm going to go. And then you get them out here, and that's when you start to recognize just the vastness of things that are happening here. And so literally everything that we have around here, from the food that we're offering, from the stories we're telling, we're trying to connect it. Even in our own merch booths, there's little tidbits about how important agriculture is. If you pay attention to our actual rodeo before the concert, the announcers are driving home some Western heritage points or some agriculture points. We spend a lot of time talking about our junior auctions and how those kids are coming from rural America, from 4-H and FFA backgrounds. And so we're telling their story. Do the same thing with the Ag Mech competition. We have a full 20 days set up of our Ag Venture, again, presented by Oxy, that's telling stories of agriculture. We're partnering with different industry leaders, whether that be the dairy industry, the beef industry, whatever industry, to partner to tell those stories too. Our livestock show, our announcers are telling history lessons of each breed that's out there, from the Texas Longhorn to the Brahman cattle, and why they're important in Texas and what it means for Texas. So we're always either upfront or subliminally driving home that message, so that when people hopefully leave here like, man, oh, I didn't know that type of cattle is really good in Texas because of the humidity and the and disease resistance and those kinds of things. That's always front of mind for us. We're extremely proactive about that. Same thing if you're going over to the horse show and you're watching Western or cutting or whatever the case may be. We're trying to draw people there to tell the story of what we're doing. It's constantly in our DNA. It's constantly in our messaging.
The other element that the rodeo is founded on is education. And so over the course of the existence of the scholarship program, I may be wrong on this, but I believe it's $630 million that you guys have given out in educational funding and scholarships. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So leading into this year, we have now provided $660 million to the youth of Texas through either scholarships, exhibitor premiums, scramble certificates. That's the whole. And so that too is obviously huge for our organization. And we're very proud that this year's commitment, for the first time, we announced at the end of 2025, and now for our 2026 show, we're over 30 million this year. And again, that's scholarships, that's exhibitor premiums, that's all the above. That is critically important to us. We believe strongly in education here. There's no question about it. Almost half of our scholars that are currently on scholarship are the first in their family to go to college. And so that's really cool for us to watch these kids chase their dreams and whatever it is that they want to do. And seeing them now, been here long enough now that you see them come back and now they're volunteering, and we make them members when they become scholars. So it's really cool to see. Another point to add here, Jesse, is that one of our significant areas of growth, which has really got us over the 30 million, is our show has decided over the last couple of years to make a strong commitment to students that may not want to go to a four-year university. They may want to go to a trade school. They want some sort of vocational training. They want workforce development. They want to be working in air conditioning or HVAC or welding or electricity, whatever the case may be. So we've really strengthened our partnerships with some of the community colleges and some of the workforce groups here in the Houston area, because so many students want to go to work. And you know as well as I do, you can go to work as a welder tomorrow and make almost $100,000. And our community really needs this type of labor force. So we're moving in that area. We actually have a couple of new competitions that are associated with welding and pipe fitting, and some really cool things happening in the school districts too that we're pretty proud of.
Well, and I absolutely love to hear that, because I think that any kind of continuing your education after high school, that is the goal. What that looks like for somebody is very different depending on what they excel at, what they're interested in, what their background is, what their financial obligations are. And so I think that, for a long time, we as society have really put an emphasis on a traditional university experience. And I think that is absolutely great. But I believe that when it comes to a lot of the services that we rely on daily, that those are not necessarily found in that university experience. And so we really do need to continue to put an emphasis on those trade programs, because, again, it kind of goes back to agriculture. Those are jobs that we absolutely cannot live without. When it comes to electricity, plumbing, HVAC, all of those things, they really are similar to food, not necessarily in necessity, but in just how they are wrapped into our daily lives and how we kind of take them for granted to a degree. So I love to hear that.
Great. Yeah, and we agree. And it's all about quality of life, right? It's all about if you're happy, if you have a career, you're being successful, that's probably means you're far more likely to give back. And that's how communities succeed. So it's definitely a cycle.
So, on the topic of that, because that's a really big innovation, obviously, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo that you went to, Chris, when you were a kid is far different than it is today. And that only continues to happen through continued innovation. So, what do you think has been the biggest innovation or what has had the biggest impact in recent years that you guys have made?
Yeah, I think what we try to do here is well, first of all, let me back up and say this. You don't want to break something that's not broken. And so we have a very, very successful model here. And we know that in our community that the more we can do to market ourselves and for folks to see what opportunities are here, we want to get them here. So we don't want to mess up the foundation, so to speak. The mission speaks for itself. Our 20-day show, I mean, it used to be 8 days and it was 10 days, 12, and now I think we're maxed at 20 just based on where we are in terms of our organization. And so a lot of it is kind of individual tweaks and changes so that people know what they're coming to. They want to come to it once a year, so you don't want to mess that up. But at the same time, you want to freshen it up. And so a lot of them are so just kind of minimal, in terms of just like here's groundbreaking, huge things that have changed. I do think over the last 20 years, the implementation of our wine program in this community. I mean, wine too comes from a grape. Grape is an agriculture product, and it has really expanded into our community. The importance of it. We have a wine garden here. It's very successful. People like trying wines and meats and cheeses. And again, it's another example, Jesse, how you make that educational. You tie it back to agriculture. That's certainly just over the last decade plus that has really grown and been successful. I think too, just what really makes us unique is the 36,000 volunteers. And we have really grown in that area over the last 20 years, really since we moved into the new stadium from the old stadium, which is 25 roughly years ago. What our volunteers do for us is they expand our mission year round. Everybody thinks so much about March, but we have 109 committees. One of those committees is in the schools year round. They're talking to kids about agriculture, about Western heritage, about the history of the cowboy. And so that's happening year round. And I do think over time, that's probably over recently, it's been our expansion to expand the brand year round in the community. It's not just in March, it's telling our story throughout the year through different venues, through whatever that may be. Some of it, again, is tied to this vocational workforce prep and helping students become what they want to be when they grow up. So I do think there's a lot centered around that. And we're approaching our 100-year anniversary. It's in 2032. It's actually the same time that our lease is up here and NRG Park is home for us. But I do think there's going to be some significant changes regarding growth as we look towards the future. But yeah, a lot of it, again, and one of the unique things about the rodeo and our 36,000 volunteers is we have a 3-year plan and process, which means all leadership under the executive committee. So officers, chairman of committees, all that, they rotate every 3 years. And what that forces is it forces innovation. There's no question. It forces us to think more creatively. It forces us to embrace change. A couple of years ago, we had our first drone show, and people are like, drone show, but it's one of the coolest things that we do. It's another collaborative between volunteers and staff working together to think about how we do things new and different to liven things up. We implemented an opening day parade. We can't do it this year because of our 21st day, but that's got a lot of attention. And so there's just always things, we're trying to program, especially during the day. And I guess that's where I would end. Lots of programming efforts that change day to day out here because we don't want people to leave at 5 o'clock and just come out here, particularly in March, because this is during a lot of folks' spring break. And so there's some downtime. We have learned the earlier you come out, the better time you have. And you're not rushed. And so you can this is a 350 acre property. And so, we got stuff happening all over it, in the center, in the arena, obviously in the stadium and on the grounds with the carnival. And lots of food booths and just all kinds of activation happening. And so I think that's what surprises most people is like, man, you could spend all day here and still not see it all. That's really important to us. And I think that's where we've made probably the most change is getting people here, not just in the evenings, but throughout the day.
Well, then I would also add to that is knowing that you can show up on day 1, you can show up on day 12, you can show up on day 20, and every day is going to look different. It's not like, well, I've been there once, I don't really want to go back, or I don't need to go back, I've already seen it all. That's definitely not the case when it comes to the event.
That's exactly right. There's different things happening on stages. We have Armed Forces Day. We have First Responders Day. There's always unique activations happening around here, 100%.
So I do kind of want to change the conversation to think about it, just knowing that a number of our listeners are people who they are hailing from the Western way of life. So a lot of them show at events like yours. Maybe they're contestants at the rodeo. When it comes to people who are walking through that lens and that scope, I feel like oftentimes we hear, and not specifically against Houston, so I definitely want to make this clear, but we hear complaints about like, oh, this thing is this way and I don't like it and I want to get on Facebook or I want to get on social media and get my little lynch mob or whatever it is. But I think that when it comes to those types of things, how it impacts us is far different than how it impacts the larger scope of an event and all of the planning that goes into things. And events don't make decisions without a reason behind those decisions, even if it's change and we don't like change or what that looks like. And I'm sure that over the years you have gotten pushback in different areas from different things. How do you guys deal with that? And what is it that you kind of wish that people would take into consideration? Because they obviously don't see it from your perspective when it comes into the 360,000 foot view of planning an event.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And yeah, there's no question we talk a lot about that. And for example, we have a lot of activations in both airports throughout the year. Both airports in Houston has, and so I'll get a question like, why do y'all do that out there? Because we want people to understand. And we believe that our brand is undervalued across the country in terms of what we do here. We don't think there's any event that's like ours. I mean, when you look at it, 20 days, 2.7 million folks, 30 million in giving to the youth of Texas, 660 million over time. We have so many donors, 36,000 volunteers. We want people to understand the story. I tell people all the time that anytime that we can recognize and be on podcasts like this, is this worth 30 minutes of the CEO? And the answer is yes, because we have a story to tell. We're making a difference in people's lives, and we want people to know that. We want people to recognize just what we're doing here. And again, a lot of it is with people that are volunteering and taking their own time to come out here and give their time, their talent, their treasure to this organization. And so I will say, as CEO of the company, that I have gotten much thicker skin on what people say, because of course, there's always things that are going to go wrong. It's a live event. It is a live event. Okay. And so sometimes the entertainer goes long, or sometimes the rodeo goes long because animals are animals, right? And so, or there's congestion because we're trying to bring in 1,500 kids and their market steers. So you plan for all of that. And so people say, well, it's always crowded on this day or that day. Well, you have to go back to the mission. And what I always say to people, no matter what, is if it makes sense within the mission, then we're doing the right thing. And so if people don't have a great time, we're going to fix that. I mean, we do significant evaluations on what's going well, what's not going great. The restroom lines are long on certain days. We review all of it, and we make the best decision we can for the whole. And you can't have one without the other. And so we want our exhibitors to come and have a great experience. We literally have committees that work with our exhibitors to make sure they have that positive experience. We want to make sure the public can come on site, can park, and can ride a tram. And that's through a volunteer group that's making sure that they're having a good time. So there is a method to the madness. There's no question. Are there things that go wrong? Yes, because it's a live event and things can go wrong. But for the most part, I don't think people see it. And, when we look at the results, I'm far more critical of our 20 days than probably anybody else, because I'm seeing it all from every angle. And, as you take the big picture, I mean, the big picture is that this is such a tremendous organization, and it's all about the people. We talk all the time, it's a people business, and we're trying to do what's right for the community. And, you mentioned Creed, so I'm going to mention Creed. Creed is not a country act. Some people will say, why don't you have, all 20 nights of country? Because the reality is Creed's going to bring new people to our show that we're going to expose to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, that we're going to expose to what we do out here, from telling the story of agriculture or telling the story of Western heritage, because we don't want to lose that. We don't want that to go away. And so maybe two, they come again because they saw what a unique experience it was, and now they want to come back. So it is about the whole. Actually, I was just in a meeting before here. You can't look at each individual piece. You have to look at how it fits in the whole. And our puzzle is pretty complex. There's no question about it. And we're always going to get questions. And not everything works that we do, but the only shot you miss, at least, is the one you don't take. And so you have to take some risk. I mean, this is an event that the public, people are going to pay money to come to. And you have to make sure you're set up to offer them what they want while keeping it within the mission, which is what we try to do. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I love that answer, because one of the other reasons that I also asked that is knowing how many of our listeners volunteer or are part of a committee for their local fair and rodeo, or for local events. Maybe it's at the school, maybe it's in the community. Again, maybe it's through 4-H. And so knowing the type of impact that those people have in their local communities and local areas through that volunteerism and just through their work in those types of events. But again, it can be really hard, especially you mentioned thick skin. I have learned, obviously having a podcast, that it's important to have thick skin, or, speaking on stage or whatever that looks like. But I love hearing it from your perspective, because if you can do it with 2.7 million people, anybody who is listening can do it with the group that they are working with and are leading, because their work is incredibly important. So I want to get to our rapid fire round though, Chris. I feel like we've talked a whole lot about Houston and not necessarily enough about you. So here we go. What do you hope people remember most about you?
Golly, I don't know if I've ever been asked that. What I hope people recognize, at least from this position, is that we're in this together. I'm not a autocratic, authoritative. This is a collaborative effort. And so I work closely, obviously, with our executive committee. I oversee our staff. But as it comes to, remember about me at this show, is that we do it together.
What is a non-negotiable in your life?
I think it's daily exercise for me. Like I run 3 miles every morning, no matter what, doesn't matter, even during showtime. And that puts me in the right frame of mind. So I'm not saying you have to run, but I do think you have to be active. And I think you have to do it every day. So my wife would say, if I say, hey, I haven't gone for my run yet this morning, if it's a Saturday, she's like, you need to go out because you're in a bad mood. So get out there. So it just puts me in a better mood. So I think that's it.
She tells you to go outside and then come back in your 30 minutes, basically?
Yes. If you run, okay, you're in a better mood. Yep.
Okay, so the next question typically is, if you're a professional athlete, what would your walk-up song be? But when we had Melinda on the podcast back in December, I switched the question specifically for her. I'm going to do the same for you. Of all of the concerts that you have listened to at Houston, what has been your favorite?
My answer is normally the last one every year, because I know we've made it. And so I know that we have made it another year, and it's just always so great. And so that's the first answer. The second answer, the longer I do this job, is actually, and then I will give you who it really is. But the second answer is, the longer I do this job, what I really enjoy is being in the stadium every night and watching people in the audience respond to the entertainer that they want to see. It's really cool because they're in their moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really like so-and-so, such artists or what have you. And so I think that watching them just react. And so in saying that, I'm more of a traditional country guy, to be honest with you. I like George Strait. I like Cody Johnson. I'm a huge Kenny Chesney fan, which most people know around here. I will sing up and down the halls. It makes me happy. And so, but I will say I like seeing a concert when it's not at the rodeo, because here I'm in charge. And so I'm
Yes.
always worried about what's next. I'm always worried about, okay, they got to be out of here. We got to clean the dirt. We got to do this. And so Brandy and I got to see Tim McGraw recently in Las Vegas. That was awesome. I'm a huge Tim McGraw fan. So I like live music. I do like country music. And I just like being in the moment, I guess is the way I would answer.
I love that. I think if I recall correctly, Mel's answer was Journey. I think
Yes.
that is right.
Yes, yes, she's a Journey fan, no question. I forgot. Yeah, she Mel's great. Yeah.
What is the smartest thing that someone's ever told you?
I think as it relates to this job, I'll say it two ways. So the first one is something my dad and my granddad both told me that if you really love what you do, it's not work. And so you need to find out what you really love doing and then make that your career. So that's the first thing. And I really do believe it. I am a firm believer if it's don't get me wrong, maybe we all have, rough days or things that don't go right. But in general, if you love getting up, coming to work every day, it's really not work. And you're blessed to be able to do it. Because I know a lot of people that do work to get a paycheck and they're not all that happy. Find what you're passionate about, make it your purpose. And I'm a firm believer in that. As it relates to this particular job, I think the best advice I got was the longer you do it, the lows are never as low and the highs are never as high. And you need to recognize that. Your job is to be cool, to stay in the middle and work through it. And so you want to celebrate the highs, but they're not as maybe as high as what it would be if you weren't the CEO. And the lows, I mean, it goes back to the negative stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, you read it, you take it personally, but it's never as bad. I mean, you're doing the right thing, so you just keep going.
Chris, that might have to go down as some of the best advice that I have ever heard. The longer you do it, the lows are never as low and the highs are never as high. I love that. I think that is relatable for all of us. Okay, last question for you. Favorite things. Do you have a favorite podcast, book, program? Maybe it's a running shoe because you're putting 3 miles on them every single day, a life hack, something in your life that you absolutely love and you just wish more people knew about.
Well, I do think you have to be able to escape whatever you're doing. I just said if work's work, it's not work, but you also have to you have to escape to something because it makes your mind sharper at work. And so I'm a huge believer in vacations, and we never really took them as kids, but my wife and I we do travel, and we like taking about 7 to 10 days each summer. It's a little slower for her. She works for a school district. And so I do think that's a life. I always come back far sharper. So any vacation, I like that. Favorite book, I like anything Larry McMurtry's ever written. I love Lonesome Dove. I love all of those books. I love everything he's ever written. The guy, he's in my head when I'm reading him. And so I definitely like that. I told you I exercise every day, which I think is a life hack. Podcast, I will tell you, I'm an Aggie, so I love listening to, Aggie athletic stuff, different podcasts. I like listening to college sports podcasts, some of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, and then I think the greatest life hack of all, and I've closed a bunch of speeches this way, is marry your best friend because you'll be happy forever. And so luckily for me, I have a very, very fantastic wife. We're partners in everything that we do. In her work and my work and our lives. And so I'm just very blessed for sure. And I can't imagine doing it without her. So.
Well, that is the perfect way to close out today, Chris. This has been such a great episode. You guys, if you are listening to this and you are in Texas, obviously, make sure you take a trip down to Houston for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. If you are not in Texas, this is definitely one of those that is a bucket list item that you are going to have to make time to attend. Ideally this year, but if not this year, at least once in your lifetime. There's no wrong time to go. March is just the time to take your trip to Texas. So, Chris, anything else you want to add before we let people go?
Just can never forget to and never recognize them as much as we all want to. But this place is about 36,000 volunteers. It is unbelievable what they do for our show and our community. So bless them for all they do and what a great partners we all are to make this happen in Houston for the city, the state, and for the country. So.
And I know that we have some specific listeners who are volunteers because after we had Melinda on the show, I had a number of them reach out and say, because we talked a lot about volunteers on that episode. So if you haven't listened to that, I highly suggest you guys go back. That was in the end of December. You can go listen to that episode with Melinda Underhill. But a number of them reached out and said how incredible the team is. And they just continued to give their round of applause to you guys. So I know you're out there listening. Thank you guys for all the hard work. But you guys, we will be back here next week. Brand new episode of the show. Chris, thank you so much for today. We so appreciate you. We'll see you guys next week. If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.